greatest, most important event in my life was being accepted by Jesus when I was 65 years old. God allowed me to be that old. I didn't die before I was accepted. But anyway, what I'm going to tell you about are some major events in my life, and I call them milestones. You know what a milestone is? It's a stone every mile. A life-changing event, okay? So the first big change was when I was going to Sunday school at 7 years old, and the Sunday school teacher painted this perfect word picture of Jesus Christ. And that was in my head for many years. And so since I'm about 86, I'm a child of the Depression. Y'all know what the Depression was? What was it? I know. Well, it was a time when it was called the Great Depression. It was from 1929 to 1939, roughly. And it was when there was about 30% of the workforce was not employed. So it was a hard time. And we were poor kids, and we didn't have any toys, but we made them. And we didn't know we were poor until we got to high school, and then we took our sack lunch, and we had, guess what our lunch was? It was crackers. Well, the crackers and beans got real soggy, kind of like catfish bait, you know, falling into little balls. So the other kids, they were buying these nice hamburgers and weenies, you know, and we got real embarrassed. And so I associated, somehow or the other of me, associated the fact that these kids were able to buy stuff made them rich. Therefore, I was poor. Therefore, I wasn't worth dirt. You know, I wasn't worth a thing. So that idea persisted in my head until about 2 years later when I went out for track. And fortunately, the track coach knew a lot about track, and he knew a lot about life. And he said, no, he said, you got it wrong. You're poor doesn't mean you're just worthless. He said, being poor means that it's just a temporary thing that'll be over one of these days. Sure enough, it was. Well, in track, he would try to show you how to win and how to lose. How many of you guys have been on some kind of team? Any kind of team? You know how it feels when you win? How does it feel when you lose? Doesn't feel very good, does it? Well, he balanced that by putting me with people I could beat. And I got a lot of self-confidence, and one day he said, well, I need to try out this other guy. And so it was the last lap, and he said, never look back. Why don't you ever look back? Anybody? You're going to lose your stride and stumble, right?
That's right.
And that's good for life too, because if you look back, you don't know what now looks like, right? But anyway, it was the last lap, and this guy was hanging back, and I didn't look back, but it sounded like a deer coming up on the last lap. I could hear him hit the ground every 10 feet, you know. He went by me like I was standing still, and I was just, you know, out of breath, and I was gone. But that coach put me with that guy so I could accept what defeat meant, how it felt. It didn't feel good, did it? You just feel like you're, you know, that's it, it's over. But anyway, this guy was a big help, and so from high school, this was, you know what happened in December the 7th, 1941, anybody?
December the 7th.
What happened? Pearl Harbor. You know, 200,000 guys signed up the next day to go fight. 200,000. Well, they put me in the service, and they put me in the front line. And about the third battle, it got so bad that I kept asking God, you know, get me out of this killing, destruction, all of this bad stuff. But he did. I decided that I was going to save myself. So I went into this survival mode, which was, I kept saying to myself every minute, you're going to make it, you're going to make it, you're going to make it. So what happened was, You get into these 15-minute artillery barrages, and the ground would feel, it would not only shake, it would quiver, just like this. You didn't know where up or down was. You didn't know, you were pretty sure your mind was over here and your body was over here. You had no way of telling where you were. Well, anyway, after some of those, the real tough guys who thought they were tough, some of you guys might think you're tough, but the real tough guys would end up crying. Their mind was busted. It was gone. And the only reason I guess saying, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it, sound like a parrot, you know, but that was it. And that was God talking to me, I'm sure. But anyway, got out of the war, and the usual thing, you got married, kids, and all that. And does anybody know what a slug is? What is a slug? A slug is a little worm-like thing that lives in slimy places, and it moves at about a half inch an hour. So I became a church slug. You ever heard of a church slug? A guy that went to church sat in the pew. So I became a church slug. You know what what a guy that suits up for the game, he's got a 0 on his jersey, he never goes in, right? He's the greatest cheerleader on the team. But if you said go in there, he'd have a heart attack. Because he didn't want to be close to the Lord, okay? Just didn't want to be. So I'd go to church with the kids, and my heart wasn't in it. But suddenly one day that slug speed was going to turn to warp speed. You know what warp speed is? Fast. Pastor come to me and said, now Erwin, said you added on to your house now. I might give him learn a little about construction. He said, would you take a team out into the community? Well, guess where it was? Up here. I didn't know I had never met a single black person in my life. 90% of the jobs were up here, and I had to learn about black people and all these things. But anyway, I learned to love them. So what this amounted to was that the fact that I was leading this group, I leaded 1 year, okay? I ended up leading it 12 years, and the Lord gave me 12-year lesson on how to serve people. So I went from pride to humility, humility to vulnerability, and vulnerability to remember what I said about the little came back. In other words, I started believing in God again. But this is like 40 years later. I mean, way back, way forward. So now I'm going to talk about you guys. You all probably, some of you probably think this old guy doesn't know spit. You probably think, you may not, some of you may not even believe in God or the Bible. Some of you think you're tough. Have you been tested? You know, the way they were tested in the war was that the artillery barrages, and I wouldn't be here tonight if it hadn't have been my closest